Imagine being snatched off the street, thrown into a camp, and forced to work without pay. Now imagine this happening in a not dystopian future, but rather the past of South Korea.
Promoted as a refuge for the homeless, behind its concrete walls, South Korea's brothers' home sheltered nothing but torment and horror.
This was the reality for thousands of people at Brothers Home, which was a facility that has been falsely linked and rightfully linked to Squid Game. That's why I'm even talking about it today.
Did you know that these were the real-life Squid Games? Back in 1980, Brothers Home was a notorious facility located in Busan, South Korea.
The only reason that I learned about this tragedy and horrible atrocity from the past of South Korea is because of Squid Game and a meme that I saw. And I was like, well, that's the inspiration for Squid Game? Spoiler alert! It's not!
Today's video is brought to you by Factor 75.
Alright, you guys.
Life gets hectic, and cooking can feel like another chore when you're trying to stick you to your nutrition goals.
That's why I've been loving Factor. They deliver fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals that are delicious. Genuinely, there are multiple sitting on my desk. Currently, my favorite are the breakfast options, but also there's keto, calorie smart, vegan, veggie, protein plus. They got these little Salisbury steak things. I'm so excited to eat them tonight.
Factor meal. Oh, yeah.
I eat a lot of Factor. My fiance eats a lot of Factor. We love Factor. My personal favorite is the cavatappi Italian-style pork ragout. It's amazing, genuinely. It only takes a couple minutes to heat it up in a microwave. It's great. It lasts a while. I can't stop saying positive things about Factor. I've genuinely been using this product for a very long time. Head to factor75.com. Use code 50oompa. That's 50oompa. It's foompa. It looks like Foompa, 50oompa. You get 50% off plus free shipping. That's a crazy deal. Man, I know, crazy. Don't wait. Make your life easier and enjoy some delicious, healthy food. Go to factor75.com and use code 50oompa.
Thank you to Factor for sponsoring this video.
In many videos, the idea is sold that the director was inspired by Brothers Home to create the series. But this is not true, at least not officially. Nowhere has the director admitted any connection between Brothers Home and Squid Game.
It's so f***ed up, and this type of thing unfortunately has happened quite a few times, but today we're talking about Brothers Home.
Homeless people and children were picked up off the street, sometimes by police officers, and taken to Brothers Home, where they were kept at the mercy of older inmates and guards. Many of those taken weren't even homeless. They were, for lack of a better word, kidnapped and thrown into a system of state-supported imprisonment.
In the 1960s, South Korea embarked into a controversial program aimed at purging society of elements that were deemed undesirable by the government. That's not good. That's bad. This initiative was spearheaded by the military regime under Park Chung-hee, and it sought to eliminate visible signs of poverty and disorder in preparation for international events such as the 1986 Asian Games and the 1988 Seoul Olympics. They were preparing for people to come over by doing something horrible to all the poor people around. The vagrants. The government quickly established vagrant patrol teams and tasked them with identifying and detaining individuals considered to be disruptive to social order. We've heard this time and time again. It's so f***ed up, man. So f***ed up. Gosh, I just can't believe how evil people are. That was not me making fun of the situation. It was me mocking myself for being repeatedly, incessantly in disbelief of how evil governments are and how crazy people can be and how often the most victimized people are people who are impoverished. It's me laughing at how dumb I sound on my YouTube videos. Smash like! The vagrant patrol teams cast a wide net and not only targeted homeless individuals like Squid Game, but also street children and political dissidents as well, and just anyone who didn't conform to the state's vision of a modernized society. So, classic authoritarianism, classic evil, classic heads, dude. Son of bitch. As a part of the sweeping efforts, the South Korean government facilitated the establishment of vagrant detention facilities across major cities, including Seoul, Busan, and Daegu. Daegu? Kill me. It's fine. You can kill me. Daegu. Daegu. Daegu? I don't know, dude.
Daegu is one of the largest cities in South Korea, and coupled with its rich and ancient culture, it has a number of scenic attractions and beautiful mountains.
Among these facilities, Brothers Home in Busan emerged as the largest and most notorious internment camp in the country. There's a big difference between the different camps. motherfucker. Brothers Home was originally founded as Brothers Orphanage, and the facility underwent a transformation of a sinister nature in the early 1970s and officially became a vagrant detention center in 1975 after entering into contract with the city of Busan. During the time in which Brothers Home was changing from an orphanage to a massive detention facility, it was a time of changes, societal changes in South Korea. Like most of the East and even the West in the 80s, the fall of the Soviet Union, I mean, there's so much stuff. The Cold War is hot. We're right off the tail of the Korean War. There's a push for rapid industrialization and urbanization and just catching up. Everyone's trying to catch up. When everybody's catching up, some people are almost always left behind, and there is a stark divide between the aspirations economically of the citizens of governments and countries. And this reality faces the most vulnerable of citizens, old people, homeless people, children without parents, orphans, etc. It faces them far more violently than it faces anyone else. Within the context of South Korea at this time, Brothers Home became a tool for the state to remove those it deemed incompatible with its vision of progress. This is bad. Very bad. Now, how exactly did the government get away with running an internment camp in the 1980s in a, not a communist regime, but like a very authoritarian regime? How did they get away with this? How did they get away with torturing people? They did it under the guise of it being a social welfare program. They claimed to provide rehabilitation and job training for the detained individuals and ostensibly offered them a path to reintegration into society. That's crazy. That's crazy. This is kind of like what's happening in Western China right now. Seems like, or so I've heard. I don't know. I don't live there. Some South Korean politician is asked, are you torturing these people? No, we're actually providing rehabilitation and job training for them. Are you sure you're not just committing human rights abuses on vagrants and people that you deem to be vagrants because you just don't like the way that they fit into your society? No. Of course not. Detainees of Brothers Home found themselves subjected to severe human rights violations, abuses, which included forced labor, torture, and also violence. There was legal framework codifying the facility and allowing the operation of Brothers Home by the government. In official documents such as the Ministry of Home Affairs Directive Number 410, the directive provided a broad and incredibly vague definition of someone who is a vagrant or those who prevent a healthy social order in cities and society. What the fuck does that even mean, dude? What the fuck? That's ambiguous. That is as ambiguous as it gets. You give someone an ambiguous rule set, they're going to stretch the fuck out of it. So yeah, that led to widespread abuses of power and the unjust detainment of thousands of individuals. As a result of this policy and policies like this, the population of Brothers Home grew rapidly, and 10 years after it was turned into a vagrant camp, it was housing around 3,000 people in a facility built for 500. The camp's population continued to swell as law enforcement conducted sweeps of urban areas, rounding up vagrants, rounding up anyone who would fit their very loose interpretation of vagrancy, the policy. What a horrible, indiscriminate approach. This approach led to the internment of not only the homeless and destitute, but also individuals with disabilities, children, and even some who simply happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Classic. You know, I've been telling y'all. This was the 70s and the 80s. I obviously, you know, this is something to learn from, hopefully. Time's a flat circle, though, so I don't know. Somebody said that. Who said that? Time's a flat circle? Who said that? I think that was Walter White. No, he said, "Oh!" when he's in the hole or whatever. He screamed, "No! You gave the money to Ted Beneke." Oh! And then Ted falls, hits his head, dead. What a terrible death. Worst death ever. Or he didn't die, though. Worst maiming ever. The South Korean government at the time loved Brothers Home, and they provided legal and financial support to the facility, and it was effectively a state-sanctioned system of oppression disguised as social welfare, which is the most evil of evil things that you could possibly imagine. That's kind of where the really general sense is kind of where the Squid Game thing lies, but really that's just misinformation. The Squid Games is, I mean, I'm pretty sure the director himself said that Squid Game is not based on this, but rather his own experience in the, you know, South Korean society just as it is and as it was when he was growing up and the things that he had to do for money. It's kind of devaluing to the victims of the Brothers Home to be like, this is where Squid Game came from. Squid Game's not real. It's not real. It's like art. It's art. It's talking about stuff. This isn't like the government being fucking evil, absolute crazy pieces of shit. It's like Eyes Wide Shut meets, I don't know, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie or something like that. I'm still brushing up on my media literacy, unfortunately. So I'm not going to be able to provide too deep of a critique. Life at Brothers Home was horrible. There was overcrowding. It was rampant. There were hundreds of individuals crammed into small, unsanitary spaces. Disease was bred. It was just despair. It was horrible. And before we go any further, the overcrowding alone is a serious human rights violation. 3,000 inmates occupying a space with a maximum occupancy of 500. That's insane. 90 people living in each room. What the fuck, dude? This is a result of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission from 2023. That reminds me of Halo, but that is a hardcore name to make a travesty right. I assume that's what the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was doing, is making the travesty that was bred by the South Korean government right. I assume that's what that is. I'm not going to research it. As for the internal structure of Brothers Home, it's loosely reminiscent of the Stanford prison experiment, in which select inmates were placed in positions of control over fellow inmates. Park In-kyun was the director of the facility, and below him was the commander, and below him were inmates that were divided into platoons with their own leader and secretaries. One might think that Park In-kyun and the commander would be at the very least staff of the facility, and maybe each platoon would have a supervisor or a guard or someone from the outside keeping peace in. No, guys, Park In-kyun was the only individual that was not an inmate. The commander and the leaders and all of those in positions of power were inmates as well. All inmates wore black tracksuits, and those in leadership positions wore yellow armbands. This guy's a demon, by the way. There's a couple documentaries about this. It's so up. It's up that people are like, oh, this is like Squid Game. Ah! The hierarchical system, not good. There was a bit of a reign of terror. Physical abuse became the primary means of maintaining control and for punishing perceived infractions. By the way, all these people are just perceived as vagrants too. In the documentaries that I've seen, there are so many interviews with survivors who have recounting, I don't know, being beaten mercilessly for minor mistakes or acts of disobedience. The inmates were in constant fear and in a state of perpetual submission, or they'd get beatings. In fact, the beatings would begin as soon as inmates arrived at the facility to set up a precedent as to not put up a fight over being illegally detained by fucking demons and the evil South Korean government of the 70s and 80s.
선두부들이 방망이 같은 그 몽둥이로 무조건 내리자마자 두드러 패면서 무조건 머리를 숙이라고 해서 겁에 질려서 그냥 거의 시키는 대로.
Once again, no professional staff. The inmates are, these are the people who are leading everything. Apart from the director, these were all inmates, and they didn't hire professional staff to save money, guys, to save on labor costs. The danger of violence at Brothers Home extended just beyond simple physical abuse. Sexual violence was also a pervasive threat, and both male and female detainees lived in constant shadow of assault. It was female and male, so there was no, it's not just Brothers Home. You think by that it's like a male detention camp. No, it's not. It wasn't. It's terrible.
밤마다 성폭행을 당하면서 생활했을 것 같습니다.
Thousands were enslaved, brutally and even killed.
사람마다 죽는 것도 나는 신입소대에서 봤고 너무 끔찍한 거였죠.
These people were just enslaved and forced to work for no wage, and hundreds of them were also beaten to death. There were 657 confirmed deaths at Brothers Home. Not all of them obviously were the result of violence, but testimonies from survivors who retold their experience there suggest that a lot of them actually were a result of that. On top of the physical abuse, the psychological impact was profound and long-lasting. As you can imagine, many survivors reported developing severe mental health issues as a direct result of their experiences at the camp.
머릿속이 생겨놓고 어떻게 우리를 잊으라는 거예요. 이거를 우리가 죽기 전까지는 못 잊어요, 이거.
And some in the facility were forced to take drugs that made them docile after being labeled crazy or insane and being placed in an asylum. We've seen that in movies. That's like a movie trope, but it actually happened at Brothers Home.
Kung says he was labelled as crazy, placed in a mental ward, and forced to take an antipsychotic drug for 2 years.
그 약을 먹고 나면 8시간, 10시간을 멍한 상태 정신이 없어요. 그 약을 안 먹고 이렇게 뱉어내면은 두 놈도 코를 막고 입을 벌리고 한 놈 물을 입에 쳐먹고.
All these facts become worse when you realize that many of those who were abducted and taken to the camp were just children, and they were taken solely for the fact that they were easy to kidnap because they're just kids. They're the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. They'd be accused of some kind of random nonsensical crime and then be tortured to admit what they'd done and what they'd been accused of, and then they were shipped to the facility. In one example, a boy accused of stealing bread had his testicles until he admitted to a theft that he didn't even commit, and he was as a result sent to Brothers Home.
하자마자 머리 빡빡 깎이고 그리고 사진 찍고 수용자 번호라는 걸 찍었을 거예요.
왜 죄를 짓지 않은데 왜 내가 수용번호를 부여를 봐야 하래?
So the number thing, that's a Squid Game thing, but also it's like, you know, like cattle or any systemic process of dehumanization. You take away someone's name and you give them a random arbitrary number. Something even worse is that the true extent of how evil and demonic, disgusting this was has only come to light recently with recent investigations. I mentioned 657 deaths. That was between 1975 and 1988, and all because of physical abuse, malnutrition, untreated illnesses, work-related accidents, everything contributed to that high mortality rate. The camp administration also did whatever they possibly could to conceal the deaths to avoid scrutiny. Many deaths were not properly documented or reported to the families of those who had passed. In some cases, bodies were secretly burned or cremated to eliminate evidence of any wrongdoing. And there was further obfuscation through frequent transfers of detainees to other facilities without notice. So, you know, what is the fate of this person who is stuck in this system, who has basically been disappeared? Who the f knows? They're a vagrant, you know, and the government says, who cares? It's very important to remember, by the way, that this was a place that had been publicized as a place for those who needed help and those who were destitute to go without any other options. But very quickly, and probably from its inception, was a place that authorities could send vagrants to beautify the streets of Busan. Roughly 40,000 people in total had been sent to Brothers Home during the more than 10 years that it operated. It's absolutely and entirely fucked up. And I fell victim to some misinformation. I saw this TikTok.
Did you know Squid Game's actually based on true events from the 80s? It's all based around the 1986 Brothers House incident in Korea, where an orphanage was essentially turned into the Squid Game. Founded in 1960, the Brothers House orphanage ran normally until 1980.
This actually isn't true at all. Whoever this guy is, I like his vibe. I like his vibe. The photos are AI. It's not real. This is just totally not true. This is real life. Squid Game is not real. Squid Game is an entertainment television show. That's a real life actual atrocity perpetrated by demons and evil. Squid Game, not real. The top comment is, what if the director of Squid Game is one of the survival? Shut up, dumbass. Deep thinking? Yeah, for a fucking clam or a mussel. Deep thinking. Ooh, my muscular tissue is fully saturated with creatine. Shut up!
A billionaire adopted all the kids and then bought the orphanage and locked them all in it, hiring workers that
Not
did
true.
their face like this and forced these children in blue jumpsuits to play kids games. And if you're
None of this is true. Literally none of this at all is true. None of anything this guy is saying is true, even a small amount. Let's be honest, who's surprised? Me to find out that everything I see is a fucking lie, dude. What is Squid Game? Well, my friend, Squid Game took the world by storm in 2021. It was a brutal depiction of desperate individuals competing in children's games for a chance at financial redemption. That's like the whole thing. It's like, oh, it's crazy. It's so innocent. We remove your innocence for money. And that's what capitalism does, right? That's like the whole idea, I think. From what I gather, I've seen it once, very recently, the whole thing. That's what I think it's about. Either that or it's about making cookies! Making those cookies with the shapes in them! Squid Game is a South Korean series. It was created by Hwang Dong-hyuk, and it's Netflix's most watched series. It amassed 1.65 billion viewing hours within its first 28 days of release in 2021. A rough premise of the show revolves around 456 deeply indebted contestants who voluntarily participate in a mysterious survival competition with a grand prize of 45.6 billion won, approximately $38 million USD. No, this is not the Beast Games. This is Squid Game. Squid Game became so popular that it's hard to really even put it into words. And as it gained popularity, some people believed that maybe it was based off something in real life. People began digging and they discovered the story of Brothers Home. And then they stumbled across some images that resembled some of the scenes from Squid Games. These images are very similar, but they're not real. They're AI generated. These are not real. This is fake, or it doesn't even need to be AI generated. It's just not real. It's just fake. This one looks really bad. Holy shit. Wow. The steps have been compressed via AI. Wow. There are definitely some similarities between Squid Game and Brothers Home, but they're all purely superficial. Tracksuits, numbers, and horrible torture. That's about it. That's pretty much, and it's South Korea as well, and it involves vulnerable people. That's the end. That is it. That's literally all of it. In Squid Game, contestants voluntarily enter the competition due to financial desperation. Everyone who entered Brothers Home was a victim and were forcibly detained. That alone precludes it from being related. That is a fundamentally different idea. Not even remotely similar in any way. This is literally like the correlation between divorce rates and the consumption of margarine, you dumbasses! Just because there's something superficially connecting two things does not indicate that those things are related. Okay, causation does not equal correlation. I don't know what grade you're supposed to learn that in. I was fucking homeschooled and I never even learned it. But guess what? I know it. The scale and duration of the two situations are also vastly different. Squid Game is a single event with 456 participants. Brothers Home operated for over a decade, affected tens of thousands of individuals, and nobody got a fucking prize at all. In spite of these very clear distinctions, with a simple Google search, and the creator of the show, Squid Game, directly stating that Brothers Home was not the inspiration for the show in any way, and I quote, "in any way." I don't actually quote. I quoted myself. He didn't say in any way. But it's not, though. It is a false narrative that misrepresents the origins of a popular series, which is lame, and also trivializes extremely real suffering experienced by the victims of Brothers Home. You know, there's probably like 14-year-olds who think, I wonder what Thanos was like at Brother Home in real life. He must have been a real survivor there. Wow. I love Lunchley. I'm 14 or whatever. You know, there's probably some kid out there who genuinely believes that and is like thinking about it in this crazy romanticized, I wonder who won Brothers Home. I wonder who won. Shut up. I'm all for jokes and saying whatever you want on the internet, but my Lord, let's try not to distort historical facts too much, diminish survivor experiences, and obscure the true scale of atrocities and other things that are bad. Let's not do that. You know, let's not confuse fiction with reality. Let's not do that anymore. Let's touch grass, you f***s. Let's touch grass, okay? I really appreciate you guys. I will say there is one relatable point. Things like Squid Game, for me, caused me to learn about Brothers Home, which I'm glad that actually happened. So, you know, it's a starting point for discussion about real world issues. I think that's the point of art. I don't know, though. I really don't know. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed, smash that like button. Go to sour.gg. I've got a candy brand. I shouldn't be promoting any candy in this video, or doing anything. I've got other channels. I've been doing devlogs, or maybe, I don't know, they probably haven't been posted yet. I've been programming a lot, and making a game, and stuff. I have a second channel. So anyways, enjoy yourselves. Have a good rest of your day. Boosting, I call it. Just kidding. It's fucked up, man.